Right, I think we're
Yo.
live. So, Jesus, Odin, and who else is it? Zeus walk into a bar. Yeah. In
Odin
what
says, ouch,
order?
my eye.
Yeah, in what order did they walk into the bar? I know the first one says ouch. But I did hear that, right, later on, there was, after they had a few shandies, one says to the other something, and a little bit of a fight breaks out, right?
Okay.
And Zeus and Jesus have a little bit of a falling out, fight breaks out. And I did hear that a certain someone else said, hey, if you're picking on my son, you're picking on me. Because technically they're the same.
They're all the same.
Well, so we're talking about gods comparing and contrasting, or whether they're friends, whether they're not friends, mixing pantheons, you know?
Oh, half-bloods.
So, can you first, super simply, explain to us what a god is, Chris? Are you able to explain that?
I don't know, I didn't hear what you said. You went all robotic and not in the normal Liam way.
I said, to start us off, could you please explain to us what a god is?
Okay.
I don't know whether you can hear me or you're just thinking really fucking hard.
Or you want me to explain what the energetic spirit most people call gods? I'm responding. It just must be a really bad lag at your end.
For fuck's sake. Am I going to have to swap over? Because I'm having problems with the system. It's taking ages to log in. Yeah, there's a lag. You'll have to deal with it yourself.
Oh, wow. He's gone and done something about something. God knows what he's done. Anyway. Yeah, deities. Ask questions. Really, do you need knowing? Because obviously it really depends on how you follow us. Because the amount of times we've talked about spirits and different levels of spirits and how that works has gone on and on and on and off for the last couple of years while we've been on. So if you've got specific questions, ask those. Obviously, I'm not sure what Liam was asking me to ask you, to explain to you. So it will depend on whether or not he meant deification, which is the process of becoming a god, or if he actually meant what a deity is in the first place. If he meant deities in the first place, then obviously we're talking about a kind of what we would call a deity level spirit. So as in a part of spiritual evolution. But obviously, like I said, throw questions at me and I will answer as best I possibly can. But essentially, we're talking about what energy streams and what deities are made of. So if you come through our mentoring program, then one of the first things we would be expecting you to do is be able to differentiate. So we would do something called scratch testing, which you've probably heard us talk about 100 times over, which is where we test your aptitude at sensing different kinds of energy. So that's pushing your psychic ability to the whole next level, to the point that you are able to differentiate between different categories of spirit, and how you kind of categorize them will differ to a certain extent from which to which, but we'll see. It really depends on how sophisticated your psychic ability is to be able to see that. So what we then tend to get you to a point of where you can look at different spirits, see the energy streams that they are representing, and start to figure out how complicated they are. So I know we've talked about it with kind of jinn and how you tell the difference between a tulpa and a real deity. We've done things like that before on different spirit chats that we've had on Fausty and some on the podcast. So it really depends on where your questions are as to where this is going to go tonight. But it's quite a common thing at the moment for us to be talking about, how do you know which deity you're speaking to, and recognizing them? Because obviously at the end of the day, of an energy, when you're talking about spirits, I suppose in the shortest version, we'll go from that. I normally talk about two kinds of spiritual evolution, kind of one going up and one coming down. And the coming down is kind of deity level where they existed outside of humanity before humanity. Whereas when you're talking the upward trajectory, we might be talking about deification, in which case you're talking about something that has been human or equivalent, and progressing upwards towards actually becoming a deity of some kind. If I'm not making any sense, just ask questions and I'll
I think you're making somewhat sense.
It's back. Can you actually hear me while you were faffing?
No, I heard bits of it.
Oh, now you're like vibrating.
Vibrating?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, when you've got someone that comes over the tannoy on a train, and like, well, welcome to your 5 o'clock train to Leeds. It's gone like that, and you don't sound like that.
Would you prefer me to just go?
No.
I can just go.
Can you fix that? It might just be that your volume's up too high or something and it's reverbing.
How's this? Is that better?
That's better. That is better.
Ooh. I found a new button in the top right hand corner. There's a volume control, there's a microphone control, and there's a contrast control. So
okay.
I turned the microphone up instead of the volume up, which is fascinating. What does this sound like if I do that?
Can't hear you at all.
So around about here is optimum then.
Yeah. And then it was like Julie said, it's going tinny then after that. It was sounding like, you're either that or you're at the horse races. And you got the 5 o'clock with legs 11.
Right, okay.
It's that kind of really tinny sound that you get.
Old-fashioned intercom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you sounded. You sounded more robotic than you normally do.
Okay.
I am robot, Liam.
So where are we then?
I have no emotion.
Have you explained what gods are?
I was talking about trying to figure out what the question was from you and what exactly you meant. So I gave a whole variety of different answers.
Did you cover minor and greater gods?
We didn't talk minor and greater gods. I talked evolution up and down.
Okay. Well, go on then. Talk minor and greater gods. Go on.
No, I've just done all the talking. It's your turn. You talk minor and...
But I'm the host, so I press the buttons and I ask questions and then you answer the questions because you're the expert, you see. I am the host and you're the expert.
Okay. Is that how
Fausty Witches is supposed to go?
No.
You're the Faustiest Witch, aren't you?
I is the Faustiest Witch.
Well, then you can answer the Faustiest questions.
I don't think that's all that Fausty. So
no,
you
it's
can
not,
answer
but we
the
can
question.
make it more Fausty. Who would win in a fight between God and God?
Okay, so are we talking God, big G, God, little g?
Yeah. Very clever, Chris. Very clever. I'm sure some people didn't get that.
Well, I'm sure some people didn't, but they're not the Faustiest Witch, are they? So with the little g one, it really would depend on which God you're putting in that place.
In this case, G does not stand for gangster, or does it? Okay. I always thought little G was a little gangster, and big G is yo, you as a gangster, which I think means you're cool to someone that lives on the street, because I believe that's what it means when you're from the street. It means you're homeless, right? Is that right?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, it doesn't, Liam. From the
What does
streets
it mean
means
from
that you
you're
is
from
all
the street?
in it. You wear hoodies and shit.
Well, yeah, but that's because you got to wrap up because the weather isn't that great in the UK. Whenever I stroll through Cabot Circus at midnight, coming back from the Tuesday night moot when I used to park in Cabot Circus, there'd be a lot of homeless people there from the street.
No, Liam, that's not kind of what it means.
Oh.
Soz.
Well,
It's
maybe
from the
we'll have to
streets,
do an
from a hood.
episode on that.
Popping a cap in someone's ass, all that shit.
Well, homeless witchcraft might be a good one to do an episode of.
Homeless witches?
Homeless witchcraft.
Surely any good witch worth her salt would never be homeless.
I don't know. I've heard these gypsies are pretty powerful.
But they have homes. They just travel, Liam.
Yes. Travel.
Travel. That doesn't mean homeless. That means landless.
Landless. That's it. I get those two confused.
Very different.
The land purchased often comes with a home when you buy estates.
Yes.
Right. And I have known several people that are from the street, which I presume to mean homeless, from estates, but not the same estates I'm thinking about. There are different estates.
Okay.
Also,
it's the reason we're staying on this rabbit hole of nowhere.
Well, we can move.
Even
along,
Alice would be bored down here.
I do think that gypsy magic is particularly powerful because they're some of the only magical practitioners that have managed to pull off getting away with not paying taxes.
Okay, that was a long way to go for that punchline, Liam. But anyway, yes. I didn't say they were bad witches. I just said homeless people
are bad witches.
How did you manage to get homeless if you're a decent witch?
Maybe they just upgraded. Instead of just having a tiny little box for home, they got the whole street.
Okay. They're owning the entire land. Okay. This is just going to get us in really bad trouble, so stop it and actually change it back to gods.
Okay, big G, little g, cardboard box.
Big G, little G, cardboard box. What?
Well, what's the difference between a big G and a little g? Is it like traditional witchcraft, as in the little t and the big T? Is there a separation? Is there something different? Is one cooler than the other?
No, I'm not. I don't think that's how it works.
Oh, okay.
One might be cooler, but that might be because they're Hades and it's cold in hell.
Here we go. We got someone weighing in. There's really no excuse why I think for any legitimate witches to not be able to get a job, considering how many spells are out there to get one. That's my opinion anyway. Now, that is not my opinion. For those that are listening and not watching, I am reading off of the screen on the comments section. So that is Alex's opinion. But I do perhaps may share it.
Liam, I don't think that's the opinion that we're going to get in trouble for. The opinion is going to be that you made comments about homeless people and then gypsies. And you know how much that got me in trouble last time. So why you attempted that is beyond me.
Well, I currently
They shouted at me on Instagram.
I currently have a spell underway to make someone homeless. So I think that puts me in a position to talk about it. Because I'm contributing to homelessness. which, given that I'm a part of this situation now, I think means that people that don't have any issues or are involved with homelessness and that.
Okay.
I know a little bit about it.
You feel like you're now part of the issue because you've caused it.
Yeah.
So all those slumlords that, you know, thousands of deaths have occurred, they're allowed to be part of the discussion.
I've worked for slum landlords. And I've worked against slum landlords as well. That's because I'm a classical witch, you see, Chris. Classical witch. Which means I do what the fuck I like when I like. And I
Julia
don't
likes
care
that
much
one.
about this morality that we apparently signed up to at some point.
Hashtag classical
Was there
witches.
some sort of convention that came in with all this human rights stuff? I don't know. I remember when you could just transform whole armies into pigs because they
Decided to
came
walk
on
on
your
your
land
beach.
and refused to have sex with you. So anyway, we'll ignore Cersei and we'll ignore the mythology because otherwise people, maybe some of our other audience from far, far away, Chris, I mean America, might not understand a sense of humor, irony, and various other things. So we'll have to go back to Big G, Little G. There we go. Katie Veronica says, Liam, I am. She says, you are an offensive twit, meaning I am an offensive twit. I am offensive. Did you mean twit, or did you mean the other one? Substituting the I for the A. See, I'm what is it they call it, Chris? Censoring myself now. I'm behaving.
Yeah, one day. Will has a comment about big G's and little G's.
Okay, right, Will. Street. Big G births the idea and creates the plugs. Establishes the order of operations, then calls in or creates little G's and inspires them to be big G's themselves in their respective departments. That sounds
beautiful
Will,
about
like
that?
you're used to working with some really nice and cool bosses. I've worked in places before the bosses ain't that nice.
No, Liam. This is how disconnected you are. He's just described exactly what you were trying to ask earlier about.
Yeah, big G's and little G's.
What actual big G's and little G's stand for. Actually, that does
big God,
beautifully.
little God. Cardboard box in which we find ourselves in currently.
That is beautifully.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But it also translates to the corporate world, Chris. This is multi-leveled, multi-layered. Will's a very intelligent person. He can make something that perfectly explains something that we're going to spend half an hour trying to drag out, which now we can't thanks to Will. And he also explains...
I thought you were just going to short shit for 30 out of 30 minutes, 30 hours.
Well, we've talked shit for about 10 minutes, so maybe we can do 10 minutes of useful information, and then I can see if I can offend some more people for another 10 minutes. How's about that?
Okay.
Will says yep, which I'm presuming that sides with me, what I was going to say. So 10 minutes of talking about important occulty magical shit, and then 10 minutes, I'll set the alarm, of talking about the street. And this client who wants me to make someone homeless. She sent me pictures and everything. And she's even stole some of the hair of the person. She's very serious.
Okay. Big G, little G. Go on.
Well, Will explained it. I read it out. That's my bit done. What are we talking about now?
No. I suppose it did. Are multi-layers. But just in case anybody missed it, Liam. Minor god, major god. Throw in some demigod. You like talking about that these days. Okay,
go on then.
No, I said you. Go.
But I ask the questions and read the comments out. And then you answer.
Stop talking shit and just do it.
Right, what do you want to know? Alex says, are the pagan gods really just thought forms and Yahweh is openly really one as some claim? One is openly really one as some claim. Now, do you mean Yahweh is the one that he claims? Or do you mean Yahweh is also a thought form as some people claim that he is? It is. I'll wait for you to answer that. Are the pagan gods really just thought forms? Yes and no. Some of them are egregores, some of them not. Some of them are the mighty dead, i.e. dead people, on steroids.
or what we would
Chris.
call what the New Agers would call ascended masters.
Yes. Dead people on steroids. That's what I said.
I'm just making
Ascended
sure people
masters.
understand the language you're referring to.
Dead people on steroids, minor gods, fae, greater gods, titan. And most people can't see past Titan level, so I'm not going to tell you up there. I'm not going to show you, tell you about what's up there. Although I think I did talk a little bit about it last night to someone or several people. Fascinating conversation. Secret occult secrets that are secret.
Okay. What were you recording yesterday? Or you talking? You mean?
Oh no, it was not recording. This was live.
Oh, okay.
This was a live tangent.
Okay.
Just ask the Dark Pastor. It was a live tangent I went on.
Oh, okay. You with the Dark Pastor. Okay. That's cool. That makes sense now. That's the answer I wanted. Well done. Have a cookie.
I haven't got any otherwise I would.
So, answer Alex's question.
Okay.
Oh, see, now I can hear
so,
myself.
Alex wants to know, really only one that's real. So, is Yahweh really the only God that's real and all of the others are thought forms? Technically, if they're thought forms, they're technically real though, aren't they? Presuming that they're intelligent. I'm presuming, Alex, then what you mean is who came along first and who built the box? If we've got big G, little g cardboard box, which G built the box?
Definitely wasn't Yahweh.
Well, Yahweh would have you think that Yahweh did it all. At least according to his, so-say, autobiography. Have you ever read celebrities' autobiographies? How much of that do you believe? Ever read Jordan's autobiography?
I was going to say, I've never.
How much of that do you believe?
I don't believe Jordan ever had any surgery. It was all made up.
Yeah.
Natural through and through.
Jordan admits she's had surgery. She admits that she's had surgery to make him bigger. She admits she's had surgery to make him smaller again. Then she's had surgery to make him bigger again. And I think she's also had surgery to make him smaller again since. I'm not entirely sure. But I know she's admitted to both making him bigger and making him smaller.
Okay. I'm still of the feeling that more than a handful is a waste. But what would I know? It's been a long time since I've played with any. So the answer to the actual question, Liam, so Yahweh. So we're all talking about that expressway that a certain friend of ours likes to call. Will you stop putting them up when I'm still talking?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, he's got one job and he does that abysmally. Anyway.
I think I'm quite good at taking the piss out of you. That is, after all, what I'm here for.
No.
Yeah, that's how this double act works, Chris. I'm told it on social media constantly. They love it when I set you up and take the piss.
No.
You see, with a magical knowledge, like with any other knowledge, you'll find that a spoonful of sugar makes medicine go down. I.e., a little bit of comedy makes all of the information absorb a lot nicer. Mm-hmm. The comedy is, of course, at your expense.
Obviously.
As it should be.
Obviously. Anyway, Yahweh. We were supposed to be answering questions about Yahweh, Liam.
I know some people would think we're avoiding the subject.
No, you're avoiding the question. I've been trying really hard to answer people's questions for it.
Right, okay. I'll ask you again then, Chris. Please try and answer this question directly this time. There's two questions here. Are the pagan gods really just thought forms? Question
You already
one.
answered that one.
Yahweh is really one real one, as some claim, is what meant. Soz. So, is Yahweh a real god, or is Yahweh a fake god / thought form? Is Yahweh a big G or a little g? Is Yahweh even a G? Or is Yahweh the PA of a G? That thinks that because they've got access to and speak on behalf of the G, that somehow that makes them important.
Okay.
Go.
It's all right. I can't cope with you today. I just don't have the brain power for it
This
today.
was never going to be a serious episode. I mean, for crying out loud, the name of the episode literally is a joke. Literally is a joke.
So yeah, you'd already started to answer that one. You actually did start. So obviously yes, there are some pagan gods that are thought forms and some that are not. But that depends on what you refer to as pagan gods, because that is a tricky comment altogether. Because actually, just because they're groups of Hi Wild Bill from Atlanta, Georgia, I can't do a Georgia accent. I'd just upset somebody else. So the tricky one with pagan gods means you're probably dealing with a set of specific ones, which you mean by extension you really mean neo-pagan gods, which means they probably are.
Neo-pagan gods are all thought
categorical.
I know that because I've been to Glastonbury.
So those pretty much are all thought forms, where actually they've created the Scott Cunningham collection of neo-pagan gods. So if you're going to actually talk about pagan gods just by meaning those that aren't Christian, then that's too complicated a subject to literally say yes or no to. It would depend on what pantheon you're looking at, how recent a pantheon, older versions of the pantheon. Let's face it, there's like 300 like Aphrodites, and that's one character in an entire lineup of people. So if you're going to break it down in that sense, you're going to have to go and do the research yourself, go and meet them all one by one, interview them, do your psychic scan, do what I was talking about before, which is escalating, making sure that your palette is as sophisticated as it can be, and therefore that you would be able to look at these deities in their true form and be able to tell what their energies are made of. That was the other bit Liam missed earlier when I was talking about all that. So coffee, sure.
It's a palate cleanser, Chris.
Oh, okay, is it? I don't think coffee is a palate cleanser.
Well, it is when it regards to making incense, because you sniff the coffee between when you're picking scent, because it cleans that out.
Okay.
Because not all palates are obviously taste.
No, of course not. Especially as taste is actually made up of something like 50% or 70% smell anyway. So let's not go there.
Can I click another button, Chris?
You can click another button. Even though you've avoided Yahweh again.
I've clicked the wheel button.
Go on.
I wonder if a big G has ever created a little g and disguised him to look like a big G for the opposing side.
Oh, okay. So is that your way of saying there's a thought for Yahweh, Liam? Is that what you were trying to do before?
No, because I didn't write the comment quest. This is from Willem Gaskins. Okay. When I ask you the questions, it's not me that's asking the questions, it's someone else asking the question, but I obviously ask you the question on their behalf. Do you see how this works?
Yes, Liam, I know how this works.
Right.
You use other people's questions so that you aren't to blame for what's actually being said.
Yes, exactly. You really do understand how it works. I knew you would.
This. But this is where you keep avoiding the conversations about Yahweh. Is that because you've not had a particularly good time with that guy for the last few weeks?
Are you trying to imply that Yahweh and the eyeless wonder are in cahoots or possibly the same?
Maybe. Hard.
Aye.
Sorry,
Okay.
I can't think of the one-eyed wonder without thinking pirate at the moment, which is not good.
Hmm. One has heard that he
Swashbuckling.
is a bit of an ass bandit. There are such stories out there in our
Oh,
mythology.
we're confusing Helen. Helen,
Okay.
ask us the questions you want us to explain.
This is all very confusing for my simple brain. I think that's what that emoji means. Alex, you're talking about Gnosticism now, Will. Will, are you talking about Gnosticism and
I don't.
Gnostic Christianity? And you're thinking of demiurges and the like? I do love a demiurge. Well, I don't like them. It's one of my favorite subjects. I do
Yes, you do
find
like.
the concept of it quite fascinating. So, yes, we started talking about greater and lesser gods. We have discussed this before. Where shall we go?
Well, you could actually answer the question like I asked you to
Which
earlier,
question did you
but
ask?
avoided it yet again.
Right, ask me a direct question that one cannot avoid.
Oh, have you upset this guy again by mentioning his
No,
name in a joke?
I've done 3 death curse level curses today in this room.
Oh, for God's sake! You know we have to record shit today.
Yes, I know, but it was important. I
Really?
was asked
Is it that
with a
important?
pretty please. So you know it's important. What does Zeus, here we go, here's the question. What does Zeus, Odin, and Jesus think of each other?
I'm sure they're all best of buddies.
Do you
They
really
all think
think
they're the
that?
original. They all think they're big G's when they're actually little G's.
Is Jesus a big G though?
No, he thinks he's a big G.
Does he though?
Yeah, he
I
does.
always think of it as within these cults, you have the cult leader, but then you also have the second in command, who's, the cult leader convinces them the most out of everyone and ends up sleeping with their wife often. They're the first to drink the Kool-Aid. Do you think that Jesus was a real corporeal being, Chris? Because some
Yeah.
experts in the subject say that there's evidence to say that he was a real person. Some experts in the subject say there's evidence to say he wasn't. It's one of those polarizing things that people will judge you on your opinion. And if they
Yeah.
don't like the answer to what you say,
Well,
they'll disregard everything else you ever say ever again.
so did
So
you
what's your
disregard
answer
my
to that?
answer? Did you just
Yeah,
disregard my
was it
answer?
Jesus? Was Jesus a real person?
Yes.
Okay.
There were several of
Which
them.
Jesus are we talking about? Chinese Jesus? Which one was a real one? Tell us about the real Jesus, Chris.
The real Jesus nobody talks about. But that's because
Is that because his name wasn't Jesus? It was something else.
yeah.
The Jews would call him Yeshua,
Something
I
pronounced
think.
in Arabic.
Yes. I suppose it's a little bit like Father Christmas and Saint Nicholas, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Whether or not you've everybody else followed that, but I knew exactly what you meant.
Can I click another button now?
Yes, you can bring up Helen's question
Or
now.
are you going to answer the question that Alex has asked? What did Jesus, Odin, and Zeus think of each other?
I just said they probably liked each other. They all think they're a big G, though.
That's the problem. When you get too many alphas in a room, they'll either enjoy each other's company or they'll all try and assert themselves and will hate each other. So in the case of Zeus, Odin, and Jesus, who would win in a fight? No holds barred. witchcraft.
I'd probably put my money on Zeus. I'm not going to lie.
Put your money on Zeus.
Yeah.
Which one's the oldest?
Unless all of the Odins turn up.
Oh.
So
Oh.
then
You mean if
then you
Odin
talk,
brings Woden?
but I don't
Wotan
think all the
and all
one-eyed
the
wonders could actually agree long enough to actually.
Hey, if you had more than one of them, they'd have 2 eyes between them. Right, I clicked another button from Helen. Can you give me some examples of who are big G's and who are little G's? And also, how are there 300 different Aphrodites?
Okay.
Is it like a franchise deal, question mark? I added that bit on the end, full disclosure.
So with the
also,
with
you
the
need to be specific when talking, whether you're talking Yahweh, God, Jesus.
Huh?
So are we going to assume that God is a species? Is the simple way of putting it, maybe?
Yes.
Let's assume God is a species.
Yeah.
Might not be, but let's assume for the purposes of answering the other question, because it might make it easier for people to follow along. So God is a species. What makes you part of that species?
Yeah.
That ain't really a species.
Yeah.
But there we go.
So what we're talking about there will split into the little G's, which are the minor gods, the big G's, which are the major gods, and then something above those called a Titan. We don't go beyond that because most people haven't been beyond the abyss, so they won't understand beyond that. But the concept is big enough for you to cover those 3. Obviously, that doesn't include necessarily what we were talking about before, which is the deified, which is the ascended masters or the mighty dead. Those kind of come underneath the minor gods. Sometimes they can kind of jump up and down, but it depends on how much of a following they've got. You know, faith is the currency we're talking about.
Ideally, they want to get up to minor god level.
Yeah,
that's evolution terms. That would be what you would assume.
Yeah, so if we were talking about Jesus, then depending on which Jesus you're talking about, he's either a thought form, a tulpa, or one of those ascended individuals, mighty.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
So not a minor god?
Well, it would depend on which version you're referring to.
Some would say he's a demigod.
Some would say he was a demigod. I'm not of that feeling personally.
Well, no, because obviously you're saying that there's so many different Jesuses as well. So it really does depend which one you're talking about. And the one that they wrote that biography about, the Bible, that ain't Jesus, because that wasn't his name.
Okay, I am going to come back to this question. Can you just very quickly jump to Alex's? Because I think you need to point out something to Alex.
This ties into my question about polytheistic gods and being egregores. Yes.
Yeah. So he's now cleared up that language that we were talking about before. So now I can categorically say, why is it that you think the only real gods are the ones that got books written about them by monks? I don't quite understand why you think the only ones that could potentially be real gods are the ones that are Abrahamic.
Because Abrahamic's monotheistic, so they would say, presumably, I don't want to put words in Alex's mouth, they would presumably say, I only understand that there can be one creator of everything because I only see the CEO of a corporation. I don't really understand much about business and therefore don't understand department heads and then boards of directors that a CEO would report to. And shareholders, what the fuck is that? So I'm just going to assume the CEO is in control. So that way you think, well, if there's a CEO, then technically they must be the one that's in control. Therefore, the polytheistic ones, how can you have multiple CEOs? I'm presuming it'd be something like that. Does Lauren want to weigh in? I can't think of the name or an example right now, but what about the combination of all aspects of a deity? Can you talk about that? Whether 3 different personifications or all 300 Aphrodites may be contrast both concepts. Ooh. The answer to that is the plants. Plants. They'll give you the answer to that. Plants.
Yeah.
The
So for
study
the people that
of
aren't Lauren,
well, people that aren't Lauren, they can also study plants and get the answer to that very question.
okay. I thought this was the Fausty. I thought we share on this one rather than making them do all of the work like we do.
You want
on
me
No
to do
Hole.
some oversharing?
I don't want you to overshare. What I want you to do is actually explain that, but Lauren will understand exactly what that meant. But the rest of the Fausty viewers might not.
No.
And definitely
Like
Alex,
Like
Alex, who's still thinking the only good ones worth listening to are the monotheistic ones.
I'm waiting
So-
for Alex to come back because obviously I said about the whole CEO thing and I wanted to see if that was his thought process. So we shall see. But we could compare and contrast polytheism with monotheism. The many faces of Aphrodite, in other words. That didn't really answer the question, but
no, that's Alex replying because you can't see them on there, whereas I can on here, which is why I have it up. Alex is referring to.
Oh, I see.
Alex is replying to what Lauren had said.
Okay. Alex says, no, I don't think that. I have heard that. I think we haven't got that much long left. We only got like 25 minutes. So we can't go into a deep subject. So instead of not going into a deep subject, should we compare and contrast polytheism with monotheism?
We can. We also need to answer Helen's question about Aphrodite.
Oh, answer the Aphrodite question then. I'll find that. Where is that? Oh, there it is.
Which will kind of cover what Lauren's talking about too.
Big G's and little G's, examples, and how are there 300 different Aphrodites?
Okay. So it kind of goes with the same thing that I was saying about the one-eyed monster, which is that when you have this is where some people get confused, and which is probably where the people talking to Alex are confusing him, is about the idea of polytheistics automatically being egregores. The reason that you have that is because you have a splintering off of deities. So when you're talking about say the following of the one-eyed wonder, that actually you'd have one tribe of Vikings or whatever else going on in Scandinavia at the time. If we're going to pinpoint to that level of Odin, there will be specific tribes that have their version of him. So, and what happens with that is when you've got lots of different groups all believing in the same deity, they all then develop their version of that deity. And that's where the face then changes, and you often have a splintering off of that deity. So don't think of it as a birthing. It's not a new generation. It's not a demigod process. What we're talking about is a whole meeting several needs at once. And what happens is there'll be a separate personality to that part of the energy stream. They're all linked back to the same energy stream, which is, the main core of the one-eyed wonder or Aphrodite. What's particularly tricky with someone like Aphrodite, which is why I say about 300, probably more than that, is because Aphrodite, it was in existence long before the Greeks. So the Greeks have hundreds of versions of her because they all had their version of her depending on what tribe or city-state that they were from. What we're talking about is there is a core aspect of Aphrodite that existed long before that, You know, the Etruscans had a version. There are versions that you can say that might be an offshoot of someone like Ishtar. So you've kind of got to think about actually whether or not they are a pure deity. Where is the purest form of that particular deity? And are all of the other ones little g's, or are they a personification of a big G? So that's the difference. So you can have minor gods, which may be offshoots, or it may be that it's a visage. What Lauren's talking about is a slightly different part of that, which is what's the difference between a personification, so one of 300 Aphrodites, for example, and a clear deity that has several aspects. So if we were to give the example, which the example she should have come up with, was either Persephone, granted, or the Morrigans more specifically, where there are distinct versions of that same deity, at which point they then form a real trilogy. It's a trick, we're not talking triple goddesses here, but we are talking triple goddesses. So not in the pagan version, the neo-pagan version, or whatever. What we're talking about, and we did a whole podcast on it, go and listen. But essentially that you've got three distinct aspects where they're technically all the big G, but also are three separate big Gs. Where they kind of are capable of being both, where they are linked, but they are unique in their own variety, and not in a sense of versions of the same thing. These are three distinct. I can't think of a better way to say it, Liam. Can you think in your perfect way of answering every question to the lowest possible denominator of doing what I'm talking there?
We can talk about sex shops if you like.
I don't know how that reads in, but go on.
Well, it's Aphrodite, isn't it? She's a slut. Right. Okay. Let's try and...
I can't explain. I can explain a sex shop, Liam.
Okay. There's this thing. It's a business. It's called a sex shop. We're going to call the sex shop the private shop. Okay. Each private shop is a cult or store. Each shop is a franchise. There's multiple shops. There's multiple sex shops. Each one has a team. It's a tribe, yes? But there is this area manager. Her name's called Aphrodite. Now, each of those independent shops obviously meet Aphrodite and technically work for Aphrodite to a certain extent. But Aphrodite behaves differently according to what shop she's visiting. If she is in control of all of these different shops because she's an area manager, or all of these different tribes, if we're talking paganism and shit, she might get on well with certain stores and might treat them differently and might treat them particularly well. She might go to other ones and moan that the dildos are falling off the shelves and is not all quite nice in the butt plug aisle, and might reprimand them because they're not following protocols when stacking their toys on the shelves properly, right? So with regards to how this works out, there's one Aphrodite, but each tribe, each shop view that Aphrodite slightly differently. When Aphrodite goes to the London shop, very often she's all dressed up smart like a suit, because that's the flagship store, right, in London, in Soho. She behaves differently. They're a bit more professional. When she buggers off to Cardiff, she's a bit of a dirty cow in Cardiff, right? And she goes out drinking with the people that work in the shop as well. Some say managers shouldn't do that because it's unprofessional, but, whatever. They view things differently, right? Now, sometimes what happens is that Aphrodite or the business in general or whatever might change its allegiances. It might sell off that Cardiff store to another sex shop. So that private shop in Cardiff called the Private Shop, that Aphrodite is the area manager of. She got a big area, it's the UK, okay? That then becomes a different shop. So they rebrand. They're no longer a tribe of Aphrodite. They're a tribe of, I don't know, Venus or some shit like that. So they then have a new area manager. This new area manager is called Venus, but technically the role is the same. Funnily enough, Aphrodite and Venus both went to sex shop management college together. They're both like well in there. They go out drinking. Sisters, in fact. Twin sisters. And then, of course, there's upper management past area managers, but most people in tribal, because we're talking, let's be fair, sales assistants and the like, that's really what you're talking about when it comes to pagans or neo-pagans. They don't fucking know. It's above their pay grade to really understand what goes on. They understand their boss, and their boss is boss. And they might understand the area manager, which they see as God. Oh. But they don't fucking understand anything past that. So as far as they're concerned, Aphrodite is God. But she could be a demiurge. But who knows? Now, does that overcomplicate the issue by simplifying it? Or does that simplification of an issue make it more complicated?
I think that was great. I think they actually should understand that.
Okay.
If they can get past actually.
It's hilarious. As long as you're learning, that's all that matters. So, like the Celtic triple goddess or Hindu trinity, obviously with Hinduism you have the idea of all of the gods are a mask of one supreme deity. That's where the Neoplatonism kind of comes in. But I think that is outside of the scope of this because Neoplatonism's bollocks. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yes. Move on. We missed the
Neoplatonism is a trap. An intellectual trap that you get into when you think, I finally cracked it. But you haven't actually cracked it, you just think you have.
What's interesting is which hells and heavens suck all those people up at the end, because it's a bit of a mishmash. Anyway, Lauren's comment about you, which we missed. So yeah, she's
So with your example, Persephone as maiden, as underworld guiding force, as resurrected badass, so you would potentially work with one aspect at a time or all combined. Yes, hopefully I'm being clear. Simply put, the spirit/deity will appear in a form that you're capable or close to capable with working with. So, if you take something that's super powerful, super complicated, people struggle with that, humans. So they try to condense it down. So sometimes they might make multifaceted gods or goddesses, triple-faced goddesses, two-faced goddesses, that sort of thing, because it's too complicated. What people try to do with the Neoplatonist idea is to say, okay, there's one force, and that's too complicated, so let's split it down. The mistake with that is thinking that, okay, if I pray to one goddess, I'm really praying to all of the goddesses, and that's not true. And yes, lots of different goddesses fucking hate each other. So if you went around behaving like that, at best, they're going to shun you away and ignore you. At worst, they could potentially take that as an insult. Also, calling a titan a god is also a big no-no. They do not like that, and it's considered extremely insulting. Don't fucking do that. I've had to deal with situations with people doing that before. I get their asses kicked. I just thought I'd throw that in there. You know, it's like when you go through a book and you've got like a little square and it's got a did you know section, which is not really relevant all that much to what you're talking about, but they still fucking stick it in. And it's quite interesting. Kind of like that. So yeah, I'll put that question back up. Did we answer that one, Chris?
Kind of yes, kind of no. Enough for Lauren to understand, but whether or not everybody else understood would be a different matter. But yes, essentially, it's one of those. Triple goddesses are a complicated facet, mainly because there's too much of the neo-pagan bollocks out there to confuse the part. So when you're actually looking at it, it's tricky for you to find proper information about it. So you're either going to have to work with them categorically and actually discover how the facets work. But to put it simply, there are these kind of transitional trinities that are often all faces of the same version. Or they can also be the opposite, which is you have three goddesses that are completely different but share a name. So, you know, the Morrigan is a good example of that, where they are three completely different goddesses, but they share a title, and the title is Morrigan, as opposed to, so in the same way that we would say God, big G, what you're actually talking about is multifaceted deity, but we've got used to calling it as a title, God. So it's that part of big G, little G, cardboard box.
Mythology and all of this kind of thing is all oversimplification. So because like with anything, when you try to break things down and oversimplify things by saying speed of light is E equals mc squared, you speak to an actual physicist and they say E does not equal mc squared. That is not the speed of light. That's an abbreviation of an abbreviation. So when we're talking about things like this, is not correct. We're not giving you correct answers, but what we're trying to do is condense it down to such a simplistic form and example that it gives you a framework to build on. Because here's the real problem. People asking us, big G's, little G's, all of that is stuff that you should be working out on your own through doing magic. You should be compiling that together. The danger from our perspective is that what we do is we get a lot of people that will ask us, right, I don't understand this. What's the next level? That's fair enough. If they want to ask the next level because they're trying to work it out, that's fine. That makes sense because they're trying to climb that. They want to know where the footholds and the handholds are. When it gets to, I'm thinking of climbing that, can you tell me every single foothold and level on that entire mountain? That's a big no-no in occultism. You know, you only concern yourself with the next level up that you're trying to get to. Now, with all of the people that come on the Fausty Witches show, even though the Fausty Witches show is supposed to be super basic and beginner, there's a lot of people with mixed ability. So it's really difficult for us to keep it simple and start off with the pleb level down here, talking about ascended masters and stuff like that, when some people experiment with that and work with that all the time and understand that really detailed in a way, and they want this one or this one or this one. It is quite difficult, so I understand that it's really, really, really difficult. In regards to Lauren's question that got put on the screen, would a pleb have any reference for a titan, for example, in folklore? Yes, of course. The word titan is a reference to that. You'll be thinking gods. What comes before gods? What trumps gods? What birthed gods? So the next level up, really. So if you're thinking about something and trying to categorize it, the simplest way that we tend to put it is god level, minor god level. God level energies, things that are necessary for this universe to exist. They are only gods here in this universe, in this box. I'm in a box. Chris is in a box. in this box over here, universe A, that box would be universe B. Wave universe B. Universe B is on a different system. Yeah, different laws of physics and the like. There's a separation. As you can see, a separation. There's a space, right? If we've got this energies, gods, controlling this box, keeping its shape, keeping it here, creating it, they created it, then with that box, those things are necessary to keep this box here. If you remove one of those, then it goes to put underneath the box, minor gods. They're not necessary to keep this box going. They are evolved or devolved entities. Generally speaking, most often, they tend to be evolved, I would say. Whereas down here, there's quite a few. I don't know. Maybe that would be a worse way of putting it. Trying to make it super complicated. Let's ignore that bit completely and let's just focus on the basics. So gods necessary, minor gods not necessary but powerful. They might even have the same kind of power level as gods, but at the end of the day, they ain't all that important. They're like consultants. You know, they're not consultants. They don't work like that. But like consultants in either, get rid of them. Not part of the organization. They just make it better here. And obviously you've got plebs down here, and then you've got ascended masters, which are basically plebs on steroids, and then you've got the minor gods, and then you've got the titans. The titans are on the boundary. So probably shouldn't discuss titans though, should we? Because we got loads of other questions.
No, there's just a discussion going on. Basically,
okay.
Alex is talking about how much of a complete bitch Hera is, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, I know of a witch where exactly that happened. She tried to switch over and work with Hera after a long time working with Aphrodite. Hera turned out to have some kind of grudge against Aphrodite. Yeah. It's interesting reading other people's conversations. Alex, Hera has a reputation for stuff like that. Ooh. Yeah, I knew that. But for some reason, this witch didn't. Liam, that's my name. To be more specific, in folklore, there are many gods who birthed gods, but would us regular people know a mythology related to a titan? Greek mythology, titans... I'd stay away from the Norse stuff because it's unclean, I believe is what the Yahweh people call it. Unclean, tampered with. The Greek mythology is a little simpler and yet still has enough within it for you to really get the concept of it. So you have the idea that titans, and then titans birthed next level below the gods, Zeus, that kind of clan, and then they have kids underneath that kind of clan, and then eventually you get other things which are a mixture, and then you get the pleb level. So I think that is probably the best mythology to use as examples of. Obviously mythology is bollocks because
it's not got problems.
Yeah, it's not perfect, and it is kind of bollocks because it's someone writing something down and then that getting translated a bunch of times and then stories change and this and that, but the core of trying to understand a schematic or a structure is kind of there.
And particularly because most of what we've got is written by people that weren't Greek, so is a case of going, okay,
same with the
they
Norse
were around hundreds of years later and they simplified the matter even more. So, but they're a good kind of general template, like Liam says. Also, working with them isn't as tricky. So,
so next question then. Talk about Hera for me. I was just given an ancient link to a temple of Hera in Greece. Ooh. I'm presuming she's asking you because you're the classicist.
Oh, okay. Well, there were a few, but I don't know which one you particularly mean. However, yes, I would probably stay clear of them, me personally. Um, you're probably not a great example of someone who should go there either, Lauren. I'm just going to say. Um, but that's down to the
The
fact that,
grass is not always greener on the other side.
you know, that sanctity of marriage bollocks that the Yahweh lovers seem to love. She may be where they got it from. Just saying.
Right. So, when you say Titans, do you mean the Titans like Akate and or Kronos? Oh, that's fascinating that you're calling Akate a
Yeah,
Titan. Interesting,
tricky.
and I see why that is, but depends on your personal views for saying that Kronos and that. Yeah, so within mythology, that would be what you're kind of talking about as their names and that. The problem with mythology, again, let's ignore the mythology. Let's assume that the mythology is the watered down teachings of experts of cults related to these deities, because that's probably a better way of thinking about it. So experts say a load of stuff. Person gets the wrong end of the gist, writes it all down. Then you have mythology. So within that, mythology is flawed, and looking at that, when you look at stories and you're trying to understand things like Kronos, then mythology is not going to
Liam, the best
teach
way to
you
put it is mythology is like when you go looking for a really good biography and what you end up with is Heat magazine. So that's essentially what you're talking about when you talk about mythology. It's the what was understood by the lowest common denominator. It was scandal and intrigue written about the most famous people, which at that point were the deities. So it's a lot more like OK Magazine or Heat.
That's actually
rather
really
than
good.
it
I'm going to steal
being
that one.
an accurate biography or autobiography as it should be. So because all the information about
as a deity.
of all these people, of all these deities going on, with all the cults going on, it was secret knowledge. So unless you were willing to commit essentially what they would be the modern equivalent of heresy, and risk being tormented for the rest of time by a deity, this is a sort of level of hidden sort of talk behind closed doors we're talking about. Is that so? Yeah, so that's why the best we've got is OK Magazine. Sorry, you're just reading what's going on the screen.
I love it. It's funny. Complete opposite of Aphrodite, then.
Aphrodite is no
I've
loose
heard
woman.
someone mention someone that we had our eye on at one point. Avi from Hoodoo Delish said she has heard of people approaching her with their polyamorous relationship issues and she fucked them up. I
So
wonder
she
why
should.
that would be. I think my previous work in midwifery was what made the connection for my Greek friend. Okay. I think we might be going into other people's conversations. I'm not going to
that
tell
was
everyone that
connected.
obviously Lauren's a tainted divorcee, so I'll keep all of the rest of the conversation private. Tainted divorcees are the best.
To be specific, Alex, Hera's only interested in legitimate children. So if you weren't married, etc., then you would have no protection from Hera as a bastard. But carry on. We are so over time, Liam, and we've got so much to do.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes behind. We got to record tomorrow's episode of the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast, I think, can't we? Yeah, that can take at least a fucking hour. So we shall leave it there.
Unless anybody has any burning questions that aren't about specifics. you basically go and do your research. And by that, I don't mean necessarily reading too much of OK Magazine, but you kind of have got to take everything you read in mythology with a pinch of salt and go actually explore and
I
what it
think
is.
We need
What
to
is it?
stop telling people to go and do their research, and we should start saying, go and do your experiments instead.
We should do, but at the same time, when you're dealing with deities, I think actually having a little read of what's out there, seeing quite how conflicted they all are, will give you an idea of going, don't assume anything and go do your experiments. But if you start with the research, you're going to have that feeling. So yeah.
I think we should get Paul to write a series of books, which is basically counseling sessions for deities. So that he like does a psychological analysis of them and then counsels them, but it's in the form of a book. That would be fascinating to read. Go through the archetypes of deities and finding where, you know, why Hera dislikes illegitimate kids and stuff like that. Well, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get him to do that. I'm gonna have to ask him.
It was written like a couch session, so you'd got all of the, you got the psychologist's notes right next to the shit they're coming out with.
Yeah. On really one page, it will be this, like it will be like literally like an interview where he asks a question and then they answer it, and then on the other side it will be his notes, and there'll be like arrows and stuff saying liar and stuff like that. Not that I've read any of Paul's notebooks.
Loved his mummy a little bit too much
about his clients.
Really shouldn't be doing that with kids.
Yeah. But there we go. That's it for another edition of the Fausty Witches, Faustiest show on witchcraft and magic and the like on the internet. Goodbye, much love, and sleep tight, I guess. I don't fucking know. Bye.